Today, we're going to be diving into something that keeps many people stuck: fear. Fear keeps us from taking action. Fear keeps us from getting into our purpose. Fear keeps us from making the impact that we know we're able to make. But here's the thing. What if fear isn't the enemy? What if it's actually the doorway to your greatest growth? Our guest today knows exactly how to help us flip fear on its head and turn it into fuel, so we can move from hesitation and doubt to a more calm, powerful, and inspired state. Before we get started, let me introduce to you my co-host, my soul brother, the co-founder of Alinus, Kevin Drummond. What's going on, man? How are you doing?
How's everyone doing today? Really looking forward to this podcast and talking about fear. We can all relate. We all get scared of it. A lot of us refer to it as anxiety, but I can't wait to get into it.
Love it, man. Yeah. And now introducing to you our main guest, mindset coach, David Titeu, who has helped people rewire their mindsets and help them step beyond their fear and unlock their truest and fullest potential. Welcome to the show, David, man. Glad you're here with us today.
Thank you so much, Nick. Yeah, such a blessing to be here with you and Kev. I love your work. And yeah, grateful for everyone tuning in as well. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
So let's get right into it. Fear, it holds so many people back from growth, from making an impact, from truly chasing after what it is that their soul desires, what makes them happy. And most people don't even realize where their fear is actually stemming from, And so why don't we first start, in your opinion, David, where are the roots of our fear coming from? Because they feel so real, but I know logically it doesn't make sense to be afraid of these fears.
That's right. Yeah, that's the conundrum. I believe it's a mix of both our conditioning, having been brought up in this world, along with just the biology that's been baked into us. And I think, speaking from my experience, I was deeply, deeply influenced by messages from family members, loved ones, even teachers saying stuff like, you're not good enough, or be seen and not heard, or don't be silly. You can't do that. You can't have a big dream, or something like that. And, although for the most part, they were meant with good intentions, from individuals who are just looking out for us, who are just trying to protect us, they turned into limiting beliefs, as I'm sure they have for, many people listening. For my own journey, it shaped my sense of self-worth, or I guess low self-worth. And it created a lot of fears around criticism, around rejection, around failure. For a long time, I internalized the idea that my voice didn't matter, that I wasn't capable of success, that stepping outside of expectations to dream big and put myself out there would ultimately lead to something like judgment or failure. And so from that perspective, that conditioning held me back for a long time from taking risks, whether it was expressing my opinion at work or even pursuing a venture of my own. So that's the conditioning part. But second to that, fear is wired into us. It's like, for generations, it's been wired into us for a really important reason, as a survival mechanism, because it's there to keep us safe from physical danger. But while it served us when we were, living on the savannah, trying to escape, saber-toothed tigers, it's not particularly useful for it to kick in when, you don't get enough likes on your Instagram reel, or, you launch your product and it flops, or, you put yourself out there in the dating scene and you get rejected. So the good news is, like you said, Nick, it's logically it doesn't make sense, but we're not at the mercy of our fear. Through neuroscience, we know now that we can rewire our brains through conscious effort. We can actually transform that fear into a pathway and a stepping stone to greater love and expression and expansion as well.
Yeah, that was spot on, especially when you refer to running from the saber-toothed tiger, because we're not running from any tigers unless tigers are like Uber drivers. But right now, all our brain knows is associating fears with things that are uncomfortable. So what happens is, anytime we deal with something in our life that's uncomfortable, we react to that as if it were a saber-toothed tiger or a bear. And we go into fight or flight, with the parasympathetic system. And Actually, that's wrong.
So yeah, our nervous system is broken down into two different forms. It's the sympathetic system, which is the fight or flight system, which is the same system that was built for us to keep us alive from those saber-toothed tigers, from lions, from actual threat. Like if somebody was chasing you down the street with a knife, you be thankful that you have a sympathetic system that is helping you process that this is real physical danger and I need to run, you know, because if that wasn't there, you would be just like standing and like waving to the guy, right? Being like welcoming. So we don't want that. We need a sympathetic system. It is fight or flight. And it does make you in a state of like panic and movement, but you need that in those immediate harmful situations. But what happens in those immediate harmful situations? Your brain gets like foggy, right? Like you're getting all this blood that's constricted and it constricts from unnecessary organs and goes to organs that need perfusion. But in that time period, imagine if you're having all this blood gush to your brain. Are you able to think clearly or calmly? No. You can't make any decisions that are needed to be made in an appropriate manner if your fight or flight system is going off. So yes, in a time where the saber-toothed tiger is coming at you, go. Like the fastest impulsive decision you can possibly make, you need to make. But if you get this email about a partnership that needs to happen, but you got rejected and now you feel some sort of way because you got rejected and your fight or flight's kicking in and you want to go back to them like, you know what, F that. Like, who are you to say no? You know what I mean? Like, you don't want to be making those triggered responses that your sympathetic system is wanting you to do. You need to tap more into your parasympathetic system, which is your rest and digest. And we really need to modify ourselves to be coming from that parasympathetic nervous system more and more. And not just with, you know, both with our mind as well as our body. And that is like the key for us to be able to really thrive in life, is to help ourselves shift from a very sensitive sympathetic system, which has been passed down to us, which has been introduced to us by society, like David says, which has been based on traumas that have happened in the environment that we're in, you know? So every single person has a different sensitivity to their sympathetic nervous system, and it's about desensitization.
Yeah. And so with those situations that get our blood pumping and constricting, like you said, like we're now in a terrible situation as far as like making decisions, like you said. However, that's exactly where most people find themselves on a daily basis. They get forced into these situations where they're fearful if they have a deadline coming up and they're nowhere close to being done with it. And so how do we rewire our brains? How do we create new associations for our brain for us to thrive instead of just survive? And I think that's where you jump in, David, and you tell us, you know, how do we start making that jump? How do we, you know, rewire and retune our brains for thriving instead of just surviving?
Yeah, that's beautiful. And look, I think like just the conversation that we're having already and being able to label the experience of fear as like a manifestation of the sympathetic nervous system versus parasympathetic, I think like in doing so, we're also like teaching our brains like what it actually is. We're labeling it. We're creating a bit more distance between it because we're understanding it on a deeper level. So I think that's absolutely part of it. I think that the goal is not to get rid of the fear, because like I still experience fear. Like, I mean, I talk about this, I help people with this, and yet it still surfaces, you know, every single day. And that's okay, right? Like the real work, I believe, is just learning how to coexist with the fear, to hear it, to acknowledge it, but not obey it and live from that place. I do believe that, you know, fear is actually a sign that you are stepping into, you know, something meaningful. What I always do for myself, what I help clients with is starting with presence. You know, typically what happens when fear arises, like Nick was saying, you know, we start to spiral. And even you talked about this before, Kevin, and you know, we can relate to it as in like an anxious state as well. And people tend to spiral into what if scenarios. So I think just pausing, breathing, and asking, you know, what's a loving choice right now? And I like to sort of draw a bit of a distinction between fear and love, because when we're operating from fear, we're in a really contracted state. We're just worrying about ourselves, about staying safe, about trying to protect ourselves, right? To not get bitten by the lion or the tiger or the email. And it's not particularly useful. But just while there's so much to be afraid of in the world right now, there's also so much that we can love about the world right now. And I think using those like pattern interrupts in those moments and asking yourself, well, what's something that would invoke a sense of love within me right now? And I can like use an example from my own journey, building a company in the mental health space before being a coach. I was so afraid of losing the great momentum that we had built. I was afraid that it would be a failure. I was afraid that I would let people down. However, what helped me out of that was thinking about the love for the people that we were serving, the love for myself, noticing how I was growing, the love for and the compassion for these vulnerable individuals who were getting better. And so it reminds me of a quote by Rumi, which is, don't move the way fear makes you move the way love makes you move. And I really love that because it's such an important reminder to tap into something that invokes love within you, because that moves you forward. That puts you in a parasympathetic state. It puts you in a really powerful place, a creative place where you're thinking about service and contribution as opposed to feeling stuck and trying to, go into self-preservation. So it's a moment by moment practice. It's like a ritual, but yeah, pausing, asking myself that question, what is this fear trying to teach me? How can I tap into love here? And just by choosing love in those moments, we're sort of strengthening those neural pathways associated with service contribution. And over time, and you can probably speak to this better than I can, Nick, but over time, those like other neural pathways associated with like fear and anxiety and like self-preservation, they start to prune away because we're not focusing on fear. We're focusing on love.
Yeah, just so well said. There's so many things to kind of unpack from what you were saying that I was trying to think about in my own life. And one of the things I was thinking about was like, growing up, we are taught to not really trust our own intuition, not trust what we are feeling inside, but what our parents are feeling, what society is telling us. And so when you do that, as you go on, I feel like you get more and more disconnected with who you are and what you're meant to do in this lifetime, and that you're doing things for external validation and for other individuals, going forward. Along the way, lose a sense of what love really is, because I feel like, true love is self-love. And if we're always taught by other individuals what love is, and it's always tied to something externally like money, like status, like career, then it's like we lose a sense of what we're truly here to embark on, which is our own specific soul's journey. And I knew when I was younger, when I was 13 or 14, I always knew that I wanted to help humanity in a larger scale. Like there was something in me that wanted to help, at that time, I wanted to help like indigenous villages in India receive like diabetic like education or receive diabetic medicine for free, but I didn't know at the time, like, how I was going to accomplish that. And so, I ended up becoming a doctor and, going through this whole process. But then this process of being a physician, I knew though this wasn't where I was meant to be. And so that process of then tapping into, okay, I feel like remember that time, Nick, when you had those visions when you were 13, 14, like, how are you going to make that come true? So making that come true, I realized required me to become an entrepreneur, which I had no teaching on. I wasn't taught in medical school that this is how to become a great marketing agent and a great brander and a great, CEO. Those things are never taught to you. You're just taught how to become a doctor, and save other people's lives. But so, the most scariest thing occurs when then I was confronted with that fear of like, what I'm doing right now isn't really bringing me any more fulfillment. I know there is something that would bring me fulfillment, but from going from working in the hospital to, starting my own company, that little bridge is a major leap that you have to make, but it is very, very difficult. And I can tell you for me, I ended up in this crash and burn because I was wanting to pursue those dreams, but I was keeping myself tethered to the old version of me and the security of working in the hospital, which was bringing me an income. But at the same time, I was trying to do my work and like work on the application. But in between, I wasn't sleeping. I was just constantly working and burning myself to the death because I was too scared to make that leap of faith, because where was the money going to come from? Who was going to help me get to building that application? I didn't learn any of this in medical school. The people that I was working with, they stopped working with me. So I was really all alone in this process. I'm just mentioning this story so other listeners out there, maybe you're in a similar situation, that we can maybe try to prevent you from necessarily taking the dive down and then, having to like climb back up. Although I'm so grateful for all that has happened, because that is the way it has worked out for me, and it was a blessing. But how do you, David, when you are faced with these situations, because I'm sure you get clients who are beginners and entrepreneurs and are in a field that they aren't feeling emotionally fulfilled with, how do you help them get to the next level of their journey in life? Because these are all normal thoughts, I feel, that come up that literally block you and keep you stuck exactly where you are, because it becomes overwhelming.
For sure. And look, before I answer that, Nick, I just want to acknowledge what you shared. Thank you for your vulnerability, brother, because I think it's something that, so many people can relate to. I know I can. It's like terrifying, embarking on that journey and making that leap. And a lot of sleepless nights, a lot of, doubt, and the inner critic tends to pipe up and gets louder in those moments and tells you to play it safe. So I'm just curious, because I think this would be really helpful for everyone listening as well. Like if you're open to it, if we can double click on what you just shared and ask you, given the fear that you were experiencing and how it drove you to kind of work harder and burn yourself out, like what do you feel ultimately helped you overcome that fear and get to where you are now?
Surrender and letting go of what I thought I needed to do in order to be successful, and the way I had gone about life, that ego of mine that was feeling like it needed to be in total control and like I knew I had all the answers. I needed to surrender that mindset and surrender the thought that I had all the answers, because I didn't. Because the way I was doing things in life wasn't getting me to where I needed to be. And so when I had that realization and that moment of surrender, it allows you to like relax your mind and then allow other information to be brought into it, which is where I feel the magic starts occurring. You know what I'm saying? Like that's what happened for me. It was like that total surrender. Like I didn't know what I was doing. You have to eliminate your ego when it comes to this personal growth journey. And, I feel like that was the major step that got me to really start ascending and starting to build myself back up into the person I needed to be.
Wow.
Spot on.
That's beautiful, man. Yeah. Kev, sorry, were you going to say something?
I said that was spot on. I mean, surrendering is the ultimate action that one can take to level up, to truly become the greatest version of themselves, because that's when miracles occur. When you let go and you take a step back and you say, I have no idea what's about to happen. There's a huge unknown. And I'm truly, truly faithful in believing in the fact that everything's going to work out, even though I don't know all the variables involved. Now you allow everything just to fall into place, but it's so easily said, not easily done. Because we just finished talking about it. Fear sets in, doubt settle in, sleepless nights. Why do we have sleepless nights? Because we have those thoughts ruminating in cycle over and over and over. Jump in, Nick.
And I just want to mention that, like, when I had those like fearful thoughts, our body's really uncomfortable in feeling fear. So what I did, or many people might do, is then I started working even harder because I didn't like to, sit in that uncomfortable feeling. Or I went out and I, hung out with friends, and then I drank, or I did different things, or I escaped into gambling or sex or codependent relationships. And then what happens? You start feeling more and more resentment because you're like, shit, man, I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing. But what I need to do requires some courage, requires some strength. And I don't really have that right now. And so, I'm fearful of how am I going to get help to get to the next level? Man, I don't want to think about that. Let me go out. Let me keep working. And it's this repetitive cycle that you just go through, because then you start feeling worse about yourself and worse about yourself because you're not hitting those benchmarks. Deep down inside, you are capable of hitting. It's just that shame, that guilt, that not being present, like in the moment, that's keeping you from escaping that cycle and breaking yourself free of that mental prison that we have layered upon ourselves with years and years of that neuronal conditioning and patterning that David was talking about. It's just become so subconscious to us that we don't even realize what we're doing and how we're harming ourselves and how we're staying in these patterns. So, people can see how it can just snowball until, it gets out of control. So yeah, just great stuff. And so David, guide us into breaking through some of these patterns. Like, now that that you have people maybe surrender, then what do you have them kind of do next?
Yeah, well, look, thank you so much for sharing that as well, Nick. Again, I can just relate so strongly because I went through my own phase of abusing drugs and alcohol and just really trying to escape from my life because I felt like I was going crazy. Like, I was waking up each morning with like stress and overwhelm and fear and just feeling like I was never good enough and constantly comparing myself to other people on my social media feed, and again like putting myself in that really heightened state of panic. And so it's interesting to hear you talk about surrender, because I feel like that's something that I've learned to practice later on in my journey. And I will speak to that because I think there's so much power in it. Before embracing the act of surrender, I think what really helped me and what I help some of my clients with as well, in response to your question, is really getting crystal clear on what their why looks like. What is their true north, the North Star or their purpose that can really inspire clarity and motivation. Because, I was working with a couple of girls, Piper and Jemima, about a year ago. And when they first came to me, they were struggling with self-doubt, with like fear of self-promotion, putting themselves out there, which is, I think, something that all of us can relate to. And like you said as well, Nick, they struggled with the overwhelm of just balancing their business dreams with full-time jobs and their other responsibilities with study and stuff like that. And being able to uncover a powerful emotional why to really get to the root cause of what is inspiring them, which often sits at a subconscious level. Like, we might look at a business, for instance, and be like, well, I just want to make a lot of money. Well, okay, you may want to consciously, because maybe that's what you see other entrepreneurs on social media talking about, but there's usually something much deeper than that. Maybe you want to, like me, be able to support my dad who's been battling with cancer and to help him retire. Maybe it's to be able to support and make a greater impact on the world. Maybe it's to help your family, like build a wall of financial security and support around them, give your kids the kind of opportunities that perhaps you didn't have when you were growing up. And so that in and of itself, I think, inspires this really strong driving force within you to commit to what you're doing. Because, like, what's the alternative? Then you fall short of being able to fulfill on this purpose. Which brings me to the act of surrender, because I think just because you have a why doesn't mean you're not going to encounter challenges. Like, everyone gets their fair share of roadblocks and curveballs and absolute messes. And I think that's where surrender, and in my program, I call it non-attachment, which is like inspired by Buddhist philosophy as well, is really being able to just embrace the events that are happening, whether they're perceived positive or negative, without grasping and without clinging onto them, but just really falling in love with the process and the journey and not being attached. And it's an ongoing practice. It's a ritual. For me, I've found that like developing a personal relationship with a higher power of my own understanding has been really helpful. You know, whether that's God or Allah or the universe or source or, you know, the quantum field or unified field as like physicists would call it. I think I can always look back on my life and notice when everything seemed to be going so awfully, like my life was crumbling. I can look back now with confidence and be like, wow, like that was actually working out for me, because what came after that was a greater level of love and wisdom and courage and resilience. And so I think whether you choose to believe in God or not, I think we can always take solace in the fact that life is always working for us, and our past events and challenges is proof of that.
Agreed. Changing your perspective changes your life, point blank. And that's what you literally was able to just share with the audience. Once you change your perspective on life is happening to me, and you change that to life is happening for me, it's transformational. Because now everything that's happening, no matter how crazy it looks, no matter how shitty it looks, you know, at the end of the day, maybe 2 years, 5 years down the road, this situation is going to create the best version of you and the best situations that at one point you prayed for, they'll be your current reality. So just changing your perspective, I mean, changes your life.
That's how you shift yourself into being in a parasympathetic dominant nervous system. It starts by shifting your mind and the thoughts that you're having in that, and from going from a victim mentality to an empowered mentality, from thinking things are failure to thinking things are lessons, going from thinking that it's impossible to maybe how can I approach this problem with a different mindset. You know, when you start changing the thoughts that are going through your brain to having them think that they're more, you know, empowered and more working for you, then that has an effect on your body. And you'll notice yourself having less palpitations. You'll notice yourself having less muscle tension. You'll notice yourself having less headaches. So the biggest shift that we can make from going from a hypersensitive, sympathetic nervous system to a dominant parasympathetic nervous system is by switching our mindset and going from a victim mentality to an empowered mentality, to looking at obstacles as a way of leveling up in life. And I really want people to understand that, because that it can happen for you at a pretty rapid pace.
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely. Yeah. What I wanted to just, sorry. Do you want to go, Nick?
No, go ahead.
Just a quick one, just because like what Kevin said, just around change of perspective changes your life. I fully believe that, because I've experienced it. I really want everyone who's listening to be able to really buy into this, because if you're someone who's like new to personal growth, you know, and you read a quote on social media and it's like, change your perspective, change your life. It can seem like, at least for my own journey, when I was trying to look for inspiration, motivation online, and I read something like that, and I was like, yeah, that sounds really great. It sounds really simple, but like, how does that even work? Like, how does that serve me? How do I know that it serves me? And like, I just want to be able to like help people really buy into this, especially those who might be skeptical or on the fence, because this is like, it's not woo-woo or anything like that, you know, and there is a lot of woo-woo out there. Like, this is just a fundamental understanding of like behavioral psychology and neuroscience. Like, ultimately what you believe, your perspective, influences the thoughts that you have on a moment-by-moment basis. So if I believe that everything is working out for me, despite what my circumstances look like, then on a moment-by-moment basis, I'm having thoughts that, you know, I'm going to make it through this, that I have all the resources that I need, that I'm safe, that I'm comfortable, that things are going to get better. That, again, those thoughts are just electrical signals transmitted through the nervous system. They're experienced in the body as emotions. I feel comfortable. I feel safe. I feel inspired. I feel calm. I feel composed. Like you said, Nick, you know, muscle tension probably melts away. And then the emotions that you're feeling influences the actions that you take. And you're going to take inspired, calm, confident, productive actions from that place, which lead to calm, inspired, productive, confident results, which is your life. So your perspective or your beliefs ultimately influence your life. And it took me a long time to get like the hang of that. I had to really, you know, battle some pretty serious demons to get there. But like, learning that and understanding it, and then being able to share it. Like, I just want people to really understand that it is possible when you actually do the work to change your perspective. It's such a game changer.
Agreed.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Human energy equals your thoughts plus your emotions. I learned that from the Supernatural or Becoming Supernatural by Joe Dispenza, which is an all-time classic for me. And when you understand energy and you understand how thoughts, play a large role in our everyday reality, you'll make better decisions about the type of thoughts that you want to be having, so that those thoughts, they can influence your emotions. And so if you have a negative thought, well, then that can cause your heart rate to go up and you to get in this anger-like state. And then when you are in anger and rage, you will make some actions or take some actions that aren't going to be really beneficial for you in the long run, that will put you into more of a negative cycle and attract more negative energy into your life. So when people are making this change and wanting to hurdle fear or look at fear differently, I love how you stated that it is good to, change your association of how you look at fear, and looking at fear as an opportunity to learn from, that there is something that you are trying to accomplish that is going to make your soul feel really good and happy. It's just on the other side of fear that, hey, you know what? Like, I just got to get through this one part. And you know what? My dream is going to come true. And all of a sudden, I'm going to feel really great about myself. I'm going to have that life that I've always envisioned. But, nothing really comes easy in life. So remember that there are going to be things and challenges along the way. But if you're looking at those challenges as an opportunity to realize, I'm going to reach my highest potential, and that's going to bring in all the love that I've ever wanted, all the abundance that I could ever imagine, and the relationships that will help me thrive. And all I have to do is conquer this so-called thing called fear, well, hopefully that motivates you to want to get after it and support yourself with people that will help you accomplish it. Because in this journey, you're not meant to do it alone. And I know when I decided to make that leap of faith, you have to do it on your own. Like that part, like you making that decision that I'm ready to change, I'm ready to pursue what my soul is telling me I need to, that has to only come from you. But when you do that, you get into this energy and way of being that like is very passionate. It's very authentic. And that becomes very polarizing, and it attracts other individuals to want to help and work with you. So after a couple of months of me putting myself out there, being very vulnerable, approaching each day with a little bit of, with courage and strength, I bumped into Kevin. And Kevin, has been like the game changer, for Linus, and helped add that business aspect to it that I never was taught, initially. Obviously, I'm coming from medical school, but becoming from medical school shouldn't prevent you from going after what you want. Right? Like that, it's just about putting yourself out there and trusting that your passion, your authenticity, your integrity, who you are, and what you are trying to put out in the world, especially if it's associated with some help of humanity, it's going to attract other people to want to help you. And it's not going to be necessarily the same people you grew up with, the people that you've been surrounded with, because those are the people who have kind of molded you into kind of who you are now, the good and the bad part of you, or the parts of you, your shadow side. So in order to really break free and overcome this fear, you may have to do a little solo journey, but trust me, you will meet your soul tribe and like be able to have beautiful conversations like this with people that are all across the world. Like David's from Australia, and we're having this beautiful conversation right now that's helping us and inspiring us to continue to keep going.
I love that. That's so beautiful. Thank you, Nick. And it's such a special way to be able to attract someone like Kevin to support the awesome work that you're doing. And in many ways, I feel like, I've felt fortunate through showing up online to attract you guys, and you reaching out and sending me a message. Like, it just meant the world to me. See it lead to this conversation. It's so beautiful. And I think that is such a great reflection of surrendering and tapping into that passionate energy that you're talking about, Nick, especially as it relates to not just like the journey of building something meaningful, but like you said, the relationships as well, because you may have to surrender old relationships, like you said, that may have previously perpetuated that conditioning around fear. And it's tough and it's scary, but being able to go through that and hold it lightly and acknowledge that, if you're not resonating with someone anymore, then it's for a reason, and it's serving you and it's serving them in ways in which we may not fully understand yet, but that's just the nature of life and our evolution. So yeah, that's beautiful.
All right. So, kind of as we're, reaching the end of this podcast, what are some tips that you can leave with our audience for those specifically who are going through this mental burden of should I or shouldn't I? Should I or shouldn't I? Because, I think many people are having these decisions that they're trying to make, like, I really want to leave my job at work because I'm tired of all the bureaucracy and the administrative stuff that's being imposed, and I can't do things like the way I want to, and I really want to start my own job, but I'm just afraid because how do I even file for an LLC? Like, there's just all these things that people go through, right? And it's just that fear that just locks them in. So, for someone that's on this journey of wanting to make that leap of faith, whether that's love, whether that's work, what are some steps that you would give to them that they can maybe start practicing this week and move forward in accomplishing what it is that they're looking to accomplish?
Yeah, beautiful. Firstly, I would encourage you to do micro exposures. So don't wait for the confidence or the courage to present itself. That is built through you just taking small incremental steps out there. So if you fear public speaking or fear showing up online, promoting your business, just start by sharing your thoughts in a meeting at work. That could be a good place to start. So between micro exposures and then also what we talked about earlier, just to kind of bring this in for a landing, since we said that, fear is that nervous system response, fight, flight, freeze, to break the loop, ultimately we need to signal safety to the body. Now, there are a variety of different ways that you can do that. I use breath work. I use EFT tapping with my clients as well, which is a really great, very accessible, easy tool to down-regulate the nervous system. And deep breathing as well could be 4-7-8. So in for 4, hold for 7, exhale for 8, right? So between putting yourself out there, training your body to feel safe, and then also training your mind as well. And I'm deeply inspired by the work of Byron Katie. She has a 4-question framework, which is, let's say someone is, like they're afraid of making the leap, setting up the LLC. They're like, oh, I'm not good enough. I don't have what it takes. I'm going to fail. Start by asking yourself, is it true? Is it true that I'm going to fail? Is it true that I don't have what it takes? Then ask yourself, can I absolutely know with 100% certainty that that's true? And then who would I be if I couldn't believe that thought? Who would I be without that thought? And then what's my next step from here on out? And so I think that's a really great place to leave it, just between taking the action and signaling to your mind and body that you're safe, and turning, down regulating your nervous system to be able to take action from that really calm, inspired, confident place.
All right, David, I really appreciate your beautiful thoughts, man. This conversation has been great. We're certainly going to have to do this again. And for those out there that are interested in working with David and learning more about David, we're going to put his information down below in the description. And you can follow him at David Titeu, right, at your Instagram, correct? And we'll put his website and his links all below. For those listening, if you can please like, subscribe, and share, that would be greatly appreciated. It will really help our channel grow. And until next time, peace.